They are mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. Just what are they so angry about? Lawmakers in Washington using their power for things like bank bailouts and what they saw as government corruption. So they formed a group called the Tea Party. I don't know, you might have heard of them. Karl Denninger is credited as being one of the original founders and says the movement has been hijacked. He's joining me from Niceville, Florida. Karl, take me back to that time when you and a small group of other people started this movement. What was it supposed to be, and what has it become?
Well, it began with the Bear Stearns bailout. We had a handful of people, about a dozen, that marched on Wall Street and waved signs around and went in front of the Federal Reserve and all of the major banks down there. And then we held a second protest in front of the Cannon Building in Washington, D.C., where we actually brought a toilet out there and pretended to deposit our junk collateral for the Federal Reserve into it. That was the beginning of the movement, if you will. And there were other people that had talked about sending tea bags. And when Barack Obama was elected, I put up a blog post and said, we all ought to send our representatives and senators a bag of tea, along with one to the White House, to symbolize that we're tired of the corruption, we're tired of the stealing, and we're going to take our country back. And we're going to do it through the political process. We were promised change, and this is what we expect you to do.
And talk about, that's how it started. Talk about where we are now.
Well, it took about a month for the establishment Republicans to come in and essentially take the party over. And as I noted in my blog post, it became all guns, gods, and gays. And that's a great thing to talk about, but that's not what we intended. And what I have missed since then is any discussion about the corruption, the bailouts, the fact that we now have a huge mess with foreclosures in this country, which appears to trace its roots back to the bad loans in the first place. None of the so-called Tea Party candidates are talking about this. The slogan that we adopted very early on was stop the looting and start the prosecuting. And I can't find one of these supposed Tea Party candidates that is actually willing to come out and say that in public.
I'm wondering if you think it's possible to bring this movement back to where you wanted to start, where you wanted to stop the looting and start the prosecuting. Can we bring it back to there? Can Americans, can some of the original founders do that? Or is it just going to be another group is going to have to start?
Well, I honestly don't know. I mean, if we end up having to do this through some other organization, then that's what we will do. I am not going to be co-opted into an organization that is essentially part of the right wing of the Republican Party. If that's where they want to focus their attention, that's fine. They're certainly entitled to do that. We live in a free country. But I don't sign on to that sort of philosophy. The reason I got involved politically in the first place was to try to get these problems solved. And the idea of putting the same people in power that created this mess all throughout the 2000 decade with absolutely no promise from them that it's going to end or that the people that caused this are going to go to jail doesn't work for me.
And Karl, I know that you have called people like Sarah Palin, Newt Gingrich, Bob Barr a joke. But you can't deny it was big names like this who helped get this movement off the ground. I'm wondering what in your mind makes them a joke, and do you think that it's at all significant that, you know, they did get it moving?
Well, look, money talks, and there's certainly been a great deal of money thrown at this problem. Sarah Palin is certainly very charismatic. I like her as an individual. I don't believe that this is the set of issues that we should be focused on in this country. Herself, Bob Barr, and Newt Gingrich obviously disagree. That's how politics works in the United States. You bring your ideas to the forefront, and the people vote on what they want to see represented in Washington. If the people want to put these folks back in power after they essentially asset stripped them for 10 years, under George W. Bush's presidency and Republican control of Congress, that's up to the American people.
Just final question for you. It started, again, frustration with government corruption and overspending. You say it's now all about guns, gays, and God. Wondering why you think this happened.
Well, the general policy within the two-party system is to find a wedge issue where you have about half of the people that believe strongly in one direction and half that believe strongly in the other. You now only have to get one vote. You don't need to win, 70% of the votes. You only need to win one vote because you have an instantaneous 50% split. This is a time-honored practice in America within the two-party system. I don't like it, but it is the way that our two-party system has run now for the better part of a century.
Certainly those changes, and we will see in just a few days here on Election Day how much of an impact this movement has had, especially in light of these new issues being at the forefront of the Tea Party movement. Karl Denninger with the Market Ticker joining us from Niceville, Florida.